If you've ever wanted Obsidian to feel more like a true database, something that is easily searchable, that's understandable, that's quick to create, something more like Notion or Airtable, then you have found yourself at the right place. Today, you are going to see one of the most powerful ways to use Obsidian Base. A single base that completely changes depending on the note you are in. So in order to demonstrate the full power of dynamic base tables, we're going to build a daily to yearly journaling system. I think this is the perfect use case because it touches on all the skills you'll need in order to master Obsidian Base. So even if you don't care about journaling, what you'll learn here applies to projects, to habit systems, study workflows, anything else that you want to build with Obsidian Base. So by the end of this video, you would have learned how to use a journaling system in Obsidian, and in my opinion, one of the most advanced journaling systems out there so far. You'll be able to build base tables that adapt to the current note, meaning dynamic base tables. You'll be able to pull images directly into base tables, so you don't need the card view in order to view pictures from the notes. It's going to automatically pull into the table base, and you'll be able to calculate statistics very easily across your base. So this and much, much more. And there's a free base file with most of the code linked in the description. The only thing I ask from you, my dearest friend, is to give this video a like and a follow if you found it useful. And if you're feeling generous, maybe even leave a comment. It really helps people to find and discover this type of content. A quick little side note, if you like what Base can do here, I've built complete Obsidian systems for journaling, work, and studying using workflows exactly like this. I also help people build custom setups through consulting sessions, and I limit those consulting sessions to 10 clients per month so I can give proper attention to everybody. So professionals, students, and PKM enthusiasts all use these systems, and many get them covered through training budgets. So it's worth checking. No cost to you, a lifetime of benefits. Obsidian Base completely restructured my daily to yearly note-taking system. I buy into the daily notes first methodology, which basically means that you start with a daily note every single day. So what does this look like? We just have every day where you open up the note and you just write things down throughout the day. If you have meetings, you indicate the meeting note on your daily note. If you are working on a project, you indicate that you're working on the project. If you are going to a social, or if you're doing any type of exercise, anything that you want to remember, everything basically starts on your daily note. It is the breadcrumb trail that you leave for yourself that you can come back to and see what you actually accomplish on that day. And in the past, when you fill in the daily notes, we managed to create data view queries that pulled in all of the information into your weekly note, the statistics, the pictures, the day summaries, and it did allow us to do a review, but it felt a little bit clunky. It didn't feel smooth, and that's where Base came in and just completely simplified everything for the better. It follows the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, Occam's razor. The easiest, simplest solution is often the best. And this is what we are going to go through today. We're going to go through the base queries for the daily to yearly journaling setup in Obsidian. Now you might say, hey D, I don't really care about journaling in Obsidian. I don't really buy into the daily notes first methodology. And I say that's completely fine. This video is just taking a use case in order to showcase the functionality of Obsidian Base. So yes, we're using the use case of the daily notes first methodology, which we want to automatically roll up some information into our weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly notes. But this is just a use case which we use in order for you to learn how to use Obsidian Base better. So you don't need to buy into the journaling system, although I do want to encourage you because it changed my life. But you don't need to buy into the journaling setup in order to find this useful. That being said, I'm going to take 2 minutes to try and convince you to start a daily journaling practice today. So normally how my content creation setup starts or process starts is I send out a weekly newsletter, which I go through and explain to the people who sign up to my email list what I'm thinking about, what I'm working on, what I'm trying to figure out Obsidian-wise. That then turns into an article, and this is what you see here, the philosophy of remembering how I built a daily to yearly journaling setup in Obsidian Base, or with Obsidian Base. And then the article turns into the YouTube video that you're watching right now. So in this article, I sat with the question, why do we want to remember? Because you probably can't remember what you did 5 years ago today. You can't remember what you did 5 months ago, 5 weeks, 5 days. And that was normally how I was trying to convince people, by just saying, oh, but you probably can't remember what you did, so how are you remembering your life? And the rebuttal, the comeback to that would be, well, you don't need to remember everything. Why do you want to remember what you did on a specific day, how you felt, what you were thinking about, the challenges you faced, the small joys you had? And while sitting with this question, I came up with a couple of bullet points, which I think does a decent job at explaining the benefits that I derived from using a daily to yearly setup like we're going to go through today. The first thing is it offloads the boring admin that clogs up your brain. So because we have a daily note, so if you go to a daily note, as you go through the day, you can write down admin tasks that you don't want to forget. Let's say there's some shopping you need to do for the Christmas dinner you're preparing. You don't want to keep that information in your head. If there's some important documents that you also don't want to use, you can send it to the appropriate place by starting on a daily note. So you just offload the boring admin that you don't want, because that's a hindrance to creativity. The next thing is you avoid relearning things you already figured out. Now, I work in consulting, and there's a couple of times when you find a cool piece of code and you use it, you find the solution, you spend 2 days to craft the perfect piece of code that makes something work, and then you forget about it. 6 months later, you incur basically the same problem, but you can't find that piece of code again, which means that you need to go through the whole process of searching for that perfect solution. So now with Obsidian and the daily notes first methodology, you can find everything, because everything that you're thinking about, everything that you're working on has its place. The next one is you stop repeating the same mistakes. So you get to see yourself in a different light. So you get to see how things actually were, instead of looking through life with rose-tinted glasses. So old relationship patterns, old injuries, life advice that you promise you'll follow next time. Those are things that you can continuously revisit, and it resurfaces in specific ways. You start understanding yourself better. So you just start seeing the patterns. And then one that we'll definitely see today is you resurface the good moments. Typically, we do this through indicating to ourselves that something good happened, or just the pictures that you post on your daily note. Those pictures get pulled into your weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And lastly, you just build a record of your life. And it's valuable simply because it is. So these are the bullet points. And now I'm done with my preaching about the daily notes first system. Hopefully you see some value in it, and hopefully throughout this video, you don't just look at the technicalities, but also start implementing the daily notes first methodology into your system. Okay, so what will we be building today? We have a very fancy journal base, and this is where we created a couple of views in our journal base, which we pull into our daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. So you can see we have all journal notes, which just shows all of the journal notes. Birthdays this month for a specific day. Today, years ago, notes created this day. Weekly note. So we have weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. You can see it pulls in all the daily notes for that week. It pulls in all the daily notes for that month. It pulls in all the daily notes for that quarter, and so on and so forth. And then we have stats for each roll-up period. This is the base that we are going to concentrate on today. It all starts with the daily note. So the daily note looks like this. In order to get the calendar and to get this sweet ribbon, so if we go to source mode, you can see that we have this calendar nav, which if we go to reading mode, you can see that it just gives you a nice way to navigate throughout your vault. This functionality is brought to us by the wonderful plugin called Journals. And Journals is what we use in order to make this calendar clickable. So if you click on the 21st, Journals, this plugin knows that, oh, you clicked on a daily note, which means that you probably want to use this journaling note. And we specified in this daily journal what template needs to be used. And it's the daily note template. So we're not going to pay too much attention to the journals setup today. There's an article that I'll link in the video description which tells you how to set up journals. So we're not going to go into a deep dive. I'll run through it extremely quickly, but this video is not about journals, it's about Obsidian Base. Okay, so first things first, we need templates. So if we go to our templates folder, we can see that we have a couple of notes. So the daily notes template. We start with the metadata. So I'm going to go to source mode. You can see this is the metadata. You can see these first two, they're related to the journals plugin. So that just gives us that day's date, and it specifies what journal it is a part of. So if you go to journals, you can see journal daily, and this is all the settings which makes the calendar work, and it automatically applies a template so you don't have to go apply it. This is the metadata that we use. And this is the metadata that you want to fill in every day. We have the calendar navigation, we have a heading for pictures, and then we have our 3 bases for the daily note. We have today, years ago, which basically just shows all of the previous year's today's date. So if we go to an example, we can see that today, years ago, we can see 2022, the 4th of August, 2023, the 4th of August. So this is a nice way, a little time capsule for yourself to see how far you've come since the previous years, what you did. And I typically use this to reconnect with people because I typically have photos with friends, things that we've done, and I'll just send them a screenshot of the picture saying, hey, do you remember a year ago we did this? How are you doing? Like if I haven't spoken to them in a while. And then in summary, I can see what I struggled with, and if I find something, not struggled with, things that I wrestled with and things that I've accomplished on that day. If there's something interesting that I found in the summary, I can just hover over that day's note and I can just go look at my breadcrumb trail and notes created on that day to see if there's anything I specifically worked on. It's just a nice way to go to a previous version of yourself to see what you were working on that day, what you were struggling with, what your thoughts and feelings were. It's very nice to see how far you've come. And this is probably one of the most exciting parts of my morning, where I get to sit down with a cup of coffee and I get to have a conversation with my previous selves. Next, we have notes created on this day. If you create a note on that day, it would automatically appear here. So think about going back and then just seeing, oh, I wonder what notes I created on this day. And you can see, oh, I created this person notes. That is the day that I met this specific person. So it just brings back a couple of memories. Birthdays this month, this just pulls in birthdays for that specific month. And currently this note is in August. You'll just see all the people whose birthdays are in August. And tasks is a data view query. So we're not going to go into much detail. And then this is the log process. This is how I keep my breadcrumb trail. And in this task format, we can basically send individual pieces of information within notes. This piece of information we can send to different places. So to show you what it looks like, that was the 4th of August. When we go to this person's note, we can see on the 4th of August, what we filled in on our daily note gets sent to that person. And if we worked on a specific project, like project work, this will be sent to that project. So that's also something we're not going to go into too much detail today. I have a lot of other videos on the topic. Today, we are going to concentrate for the daily note on these bases. So the daily note template, we basically have a call out to the base journal. And today, years ago, notes created on this day, and birthdays this month. So the journaling base that we have the journaling base. So if we go to our base folder, we open up the journals. The way that you'll create it, you'll just create a new base, either by right-clicking somewhere on the empty ribbon space, and you go with new base, or you can go to command palette and you can say bases, create new base. You call it journal, and that is when you're going to start adding different views. So you'll be met with a blank view, and then you just want to start applying some things to it. So we first want to see our daily basis. So when we start with today, years ago, you can see that nothing is being pulled in because this query on this specific day only works when the base is on a specific day. So you can see when we clicked on this note, the query that we have, which is on this day contains true, gets activated because it basically sees that we are on this note. And these are the relative bases, which makes base very powerful because you don't have to have where today's date equals this day. No, you can have it relative to a specific day. So if I go to the next day, you can see that nothing won't appear because I don't have previous years for that. But this is just relative, and let's go into how it works. So on this day contains true. So this is a column that we created in order to basically pull previous years into today's note. So if we go to properties and we go to that specific property on this day, so you can add a formula and you can say on this day. This is the formula that we use. And if you're interested in the code, the article that I wrote will also indicate how to use the code. So if you want to write the code out, which will take some time, the images are there as well. Just make it easier for yourself. But basically what this does is if the current file's month is equal to the file name month, so it's looking at this file and it's looking at the date and it's looking at this file's month, which is 08 August. And then it goes and looks at all other notes and it's checking, is there any other notes with the month of August? So the next thing that it does is it goes and looks at the same day. And then the third condition is it's looking where the year is smaller than the current year. So that would not include the current year's note. And then we just have a couple of true, false, false, false. So if it's true, so if we go back to our filter, on this day contains true, it means that, oh, these are notes that we want to be displayed because they meet the month and they meet the day condition and they are smaller than 2024. And that's the query. For the columns that we include, so you can see we have the file name, we have the summary, we have the 3 first images, and then we have a voice note if you so wish, but you can add other properties from your daily note as well. But these are the properties that we have, and you can see there's this little F for the first image, second image, and third image, and that just means that we added a calculated column, a special formula. And if we go into the first one, we can see that this is the formula in order to retrieve the first image from any note. So we use filters in order to pull in notes that we're interested in. Now we're trying to display information from those notes, and we can just open it up here on the side so we can see what is actually happening. And let's close down the right hand side panel. Let's make this a little bit smaller. There we go. So now that we have the columns that we want to pull in, we want to pull in the first image from that note. And that's the first image. The second image is exactly the same, but it just changes the position. So this basically means it's going and looking for the second embed, the second image in that file. And the third one does exactly the same. It's going to the second position because in coding you count from 0, 1, 2. So this is 2 basically means the third image. And that's why it's being displayed correctly. So that's how you pull in images from different notes into a table format. Okay, so that's today, years ago. That is the full base query that you need. You can see that we're sorting by file name. Normally when you see this little down arrow on a column, that it basically means that you're sorting on that column. So this is probably ascending, this is descending, But when you click on it, you can also go to the sort and you can see how that changes. So here it changes from file name A to Z. When we click it, it's going to go from Z to A. But you can just click on the column. So that's pretty cool. So that's our first base. Let's go to the next one. Notes created on this day. So any notes that were created on that specific day, 2024, 08, 04, will pop up here. So let's say throughout the day we created Astrid, the Viking note. That will pop up here. It's not popping up here because I did not create these notes on that specific day because I'm using this week as the example. But any note that you create on that day will pop up here. So what does the data view query look like? Let's go to our views and we're going to look at notes created this day. So here we have a filter. And the filter has three conditions that all need to be true. The first one is we're looking at the created time is equals to date this file name. So this file name converted to a date, which is year, month, day, is it equal to all of the files in your Obsidian Base's created time? If those two match, then it retrieves the notes into this notes created this day. The last two filters that we apply is just to remove any daily notes, so where the folder does not start with journal. So this is just to not go and look into the journal folder. So we don't want to return anything from the journal folder because we'll just reference this file's name. So this file would be referencing itself. So we don't want that. And the third thing is we don't want to see any attachments being brought back. We have the system base, which we went through in the previous video, which we can see all of our attachments. So we don't necessarily want to see it on our daily note. So if we go back to our journals, that's pretty much it. The properties that we show is the file name, summary, created time, modified time, and the folder where it resides. So that's it for notes created this day. Nothing too complicated. And then the third one, birthdays this month. So birthdays this month. If we go to filter, it's quite easy. We're looking for where the birthday of a specific note's name, and we're pulling out the month, is equal to this file's name converted to a date, and we're looking at the month. So if 08 equals 08, then it's going to return all the people who has a birthday in the month of August. And the properties that we use, we can see that we have the file name, the birthday, and the summary. And you can add any other properties that you want. That's quite easy to do. But this is quite nice because then you can always just go in, you can see the last time you had contact with this person. You can see, you can even see the birthday ideas. This is great. He likes feet pictures. Awesome. So that is the gift that I'm going to gift him on his birthday. Good stuff. Okay, so that is that for the daily note. The daily note, we just capture 3 pictures, and you can paste it anywhere, but we have a section for it, so pictures. And at the end of the day, you can fill in some metadata. So sleep hours, sleep rating. I typically use a rating scale of -2 being the worst to 2 being the best. Log healthy eating, same rating scale. Log day rating, same rating scale. Log energy rating, same rating scale. Then I have a list metadata field for what I ate on that day. You can add some tags, and then I add some summary information about the day. That's basically a summary of how the day went. So on a daily note, we filled in all of the things we did throughout the day. We have these base views that we can utilize. We filled in pictures and we filled in the metadata. That is the difficult part of this system. Now is the easy part. You just need to go to your weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly and just see how everything is rolled up automatically without you needing to do anything. And it is so simple. So if we go to the weekly note, you can see that all of the week's days have been pulled into a table called the weekly note. So we're going to close down the properties for now. And we're just going to look at what was returned without us having to do anything. We just clicked on the calendar week 32 And this is what it came up with. We can see for each day we have the file name that we can hover over, and we can command hover over, and we can just see everything we did on that day without having to go to the day. You can see how the day went from -2 to 2. We can see the summary, the first 3 pictures, a voice note, we can see the file tags, and we can add any other properties if you want. So this is typically where I would end up at the end of my week. I'll have a quick glance, I'll see how the week went, and then the next base table is the weekly stats. And this is where we do the same thing. We pull in all of the days for that specific week. And again, this happens automatically. And we pull in all of the metadata that we used on, or filled in rather, on our daily note. So if we go to the daily note, we can see that these metadata fields, they are now automatically populated in this weekly stats. And what is cool about Obsidian Base is we now have these statistics at the bottom. So if you want to see how many hours in total did I sleep for this week, you can do the sum. You can see, oh, I slept for 40.5 hours. But typically we just stick to average because we want to see the average score for these metrics. So 1.14 on a scale of -2 to 2, that was quite good. I had a good week. Log healthy eating, dead average. Sleep hours, I should improve that. And log sleep rating, it was okay. And then we have the summary as well. So these are the 2 base queries that we'll concentrate on. The rest is for the next journal daily to yearly video that I'll bring out. But we won't go into the data view queries and a couple of the other features of the journaling setup in Obsidian. If you want to use this, this is available in my Evergreen Vault, which you can just purchase and everything is ready for you without any setup. But that's for later today. Today we're going to concentrate on these 2 base queries. Okay, so first things first, we want to go look at the weekly note template to see what it looks like. So we have the weekly note template. And if we go to source mode, we have the same YAML metadata at the top. This just brings in the start date for that week. We can see that's journal weekly, which relates back to, if we go to settings, if we go to journals, we have the journal weekly. So this is the journal that we add. So we have a complete journal for daily, we have a complete journal for yearly, monthly, weekly, and quarterly. And you do that by clicking the plus. So let's just quickly run through what you need to fill in order to make the journaling setup work. So you need to create a new journal and you call it Journal Daily. You make sure that everything looks similar to what we have here. I'm just going to show you the folder structure that I use. So here's the folder structure and we have the daily notes. All the daily notes goes into their respective year and then their respective month. And what this query does on the Journal Daily, it goes to that folder, Journal 01 Daily, Journal 01 Daily. And if there's no year folder yet, it creates it. So that's what this little piece of code does. And if there's no month folder, it also creates it. So that's what this little piece of code does. Just make sure you get that right. But again, if you want to know how to set up the journaling journals plugin, I have the article linked in the description below. Then the note name, we want the note name to be today's date. And then the templates just points to where the templates reside. For the weekly note template that we're currently on, we have exactly the same thing. So you're going to click on the plus button, you're going to go to the weekly note, and you're going to fill in the week name like this. So this is the format we want. We want the year, and then we want the letter W to indicate it's week, and then what week is it. So here in the calendar that the Journals plugin provides, you can see what week we are currently in that specific year. So that's pretty cool. Then where do these weekly notes need to be saved? Well, it needs to go to the journal folder, into the 02 weekly folder. And then we have the same thing. We want it to be saved in its respective year and respective month. And note name template date. And the template, we just point to the weekly note template. So I'm quickly going to run through the rest of these so that we don't have to come back to the Journals plugin every single time. So for the monthly, we have this as the naming format. We save it in the Journal 03 monthly folder, and we are only going to use the sub-year folder. So previously we had the month, but for the month we just want to save it in the year folder. Note name template is the same, and we point to our monthly note template. And quarterly, same thing. We're just going to save it into the year folder. This is the naming convention. And under templates, you can add templates and point to the quarterly note. And lastly, thanks for bearing with me, but I know some people would find this interesting. We have the naming format and where it needs to be saved. And then a template obviously just points to the yearly note template. Okay, so that's basically how you set up the Journals plugin, and everything else works relatively smoothly. So for the weekly note template, we have this metadata at the top, and these metadata fields, they basically just feed the graph that we see at the bottom. So health, personal growth, career. So this is just a reflection that you can fill in, but we're not going to speak about that. And then we can see we also have this heat map calendar, also have different videos on how to implement this that also pulls information automatically from your daily notes. But what we are going to concentrate on is just this top part, where we can see the Journal.base weekly note, Journal.base weekly stats. The rest is for another video. Okay, Journal.base weekly note. So let's go to our weekly note and see what it looks like and how to create it. So we're going to open up a new tab. We're going to go to our Journal.base. And now we're going to go to the weekly note. So you can see, again, it's empty because these base queries are relative. They're dynamic. So relative to what note you are currently on, that is how this table will be populated. And that's why we can just use this weekly note, meaning if we go to source, we can just use this code, which is exactly the same view in the same base for each weekly note that we have. So if we go to the next week, we can just paste this journaling base and it would automatically detect that we are in week 33 and we only want to see these days being populated. So for week 33, it's exactly the same query as we have on week 32. And we can just close this. But because it's a relative query, and we'll go into what the filter looks like in a bit, it knows to only go and retrieve those days notes. So journaling perspective, this is pretty cool, but you can think in a project perspective as well. You want relative basis. You want a meeting base that will pull in meetings relative to the project that the base is on. In the third or fourth video in a series, we'll go through the project management setup, but the functionality almost works exactly the same for the relative basis. So if we go back to our weekly note and we go and look at the base. So the base, we have these columns: file name, log date rating, summary. We've gone through the first image, second image, third image. It's exactly the same code. We have a voice note and some tags. So what does the filter look like? If we go to the filter, this is the code that I came up with. And it's a little bit of mental gymnastics. I'm pretty sure it would get a little bit easier in the future, but this works perfectly. Just write it down. If you want to have a longer look at it, go to the article that would also have the same code. Basically what this does is it looks at the current note that you're on. It goes to the properties and it looks at the journal date. And what it does is it says to Obsidian, cool, for this note, for this weekly note, we want to retrieve all of the daily notes, starting from this day, plus 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these are the days that we want to return if they exist. So we have the filter. These two queries basically does what I just described. And then we have another one, which we just want to return notes that is journal notes. So these are the three queries. If we go to properties, you can see that the little F icon, this is where we brought in or created our own calculated columns. This is again the image calculations. So image file.embeds position 0, which is technically position 1. Second image is just the same, but with the second position, and the third image, just the third position. So that's it for the weekly note base. Pretty cool, because at the end of the week, you can just sit back and just see what you did on this week. And that's why the daily notes first methodology are so important. It is so useful, because when you go to the Rollup notes, everything just happens automatically. So imagine at the end of your year, you have all 365 notes filled in properly with pictures, with a short summary and a log day rating. You can then quickly check, okay, I want to pinpoint which days in my year were exceptional days, meaning a log day rating of 2, the best rating that you can possibly get. Well, you can then just change a couple of the filters. You can remove the file name filter and then filter descending for the highest days. And you can quickly check the summary and the pictures, and you can conclude, okay, what makes me happy? Let's have more of those days. So I feel that this is such a powerful system, especially for reviewing. Unfortunately, it does take a little bit of time from your side in order to get used to using the daily notes first methodology. All right, next one, stats. Relatively same thing. The queries will be almost exactly the same. So if we go to our Journal.base and we go to our weekly stats, so here you can just add a view and then select the same properties and apply the filter. But once you create it for the weekly, the monthly, quarterly, and yearly is going to be exactly the same. It's just going to be different date filters or relative date filters. So for the weekly stats, when we go to our weekly note, you can see that once we go to the weekly note, it populates it in the base, because the base is saying, oh, the current file that's active, that is the one that we want to show the relative information for. So for week 32, starting on the 4th, the filter does exactly the same thing as the previous query, which it just basically goes and looks at your weekly note, and it knows to only go and retrieve the days in that specific week. And yeah, it's exactly the same. The only thing that's changing in this base view is the properties that we're pulling in. So we just pull in the properties from our daily note: the log day rating, healthy eating, sleep hours, sleep rating, summary. So now if we go to our weekly note, we can see it does something quite cool, which is the auto summation or the auto averaging of your information. So previously we had to use weird plugins in order to get something in our weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly, but it wasn't very pretty. So we had to write code like this, and it was a little bit clunky. But now it does everything automatically, and you'll see with the yearly notes, it breaks it up per month as well. So you can see your average for a specific month. And at the end of year review, that just becomes powerful if you fold in your daily note. So this is obviously for the daily notes example, but you can use this for any other trackers. So let's say you are into running and you want to see how many kilometers you ran in a year. Every time when you go for a run, you just log it on a note and you pull in that information, and then you can check the average or the sum or the max that you ran or the minimum that you ran, standard deviation if you like. You can get quite fancy mathematically. Oh yeah, math. And yeah, that's basically it for the weekly note. So when we go to the monthly, and you can see that we basically have as many notes as the weekly, because I've only filled in information for that 1 week, but it would go and retrieve all the daily notes for that specific month and year. So there would be about 30 notes in this monthly note, and there will be about 30 notes in the stats section. So the filter for these are exactly the same, except for the date filter. So this is the filter in order to get the daily notes for this specific month. And let's just open up the journals again. So for the monthly note, everything is exactly the same except for the date filter. So if we go into the monthly note. And you only have to do this once and then just change the filters. So for the weekly note, obviously we want the same properties, the same columns for the week, month, quarter, and year. The only thing that's going to change is the date filter. So what you can do is you can go to the little right arrow next to the weekly note. You can press on those 3 little dots and you can say duplicate view. And what that would do is it will basically take everything in this view and duplicate it. And then you can change the name to monthly note. And then you just need to go and apply the correct filter, which is this. So the same year and the same month. When we go to the monthly stats, you can see we're looking for the same month and the same year, and type contains daily. And if you want to see what the monthly note template looks like, it looks like this. If you go to source mode, it looks almost exactly the same, except the type changed. We are pulling in the monthly note instead of the weekly notes, the monthly stats instead of the weekly stats, and this code requires some other plugins, but that is for a different video. Okay, monthly note. That's it for the monthly note. Let's go to the quarterly note and see what that date filter looks like. This works exactly the same as the monthly note, just the date filter that changed. So here you can see it's breaking it up per month. So if there's multiple months of daily information that you filled in, it would break this up per the month, and then you would see the averages for the month. And we'll get into how you can achieve this a little bit later. So we first want to go look at the query. So let's pull the journals to the side again, the Journal.base. Let's close the side panels and let's go look at the filter. So this is where you would need to pause a little bit. This took a little bit of effort on my side to get right, but we managed to do it. Hell yeah, math. And basically what we're doing is we're checking the quarter of this specific note, and then we deducing which 3 months should this fall into, and then we're also making sure that it's the same year. And then we're just looking where the type contains daily. And that's the same for quarterly stats and the quarterly note. We're just looking for that time range. So if you click on a specific quarter, you can see it populates all the correct dates. Pretty cool if you ask me. So now the next thing is we want to see how we get this year-month calculation. So for each month, we can basically see the averages for that specific month, and then at the end of the quarter you can see your total quarterly average as well. Again, I just didn't fill in enough daily demo notes, but you can imagine that if there's 3 months worth of information, you'll see the summary or the averages for that specific month, 3 months, and then you'll see the total averages at the bottom as well. How do we do that? Well, we sort by a property called year month. So if you go to your properties, you can see that I created a new one called year month. And if we select it, you can see what it returns. So a new calculated column that basically just checks the year and the month from that specific daily note. And the formula, if we go to properties and we go to the year month formula, it's just this. It goes and looks at the date of the daily note, and it just formats it into this format. And what we can then do is we can sort it, we can group it by the year month. So if there's a 2024-09, it would group the daily notes on the 2024-09. So that's just a fun little way to group and to see different views of your statistics when you have a lot of different notes. So you can think of grouping this by different categories. So let's say you go for runs in different places in the world, and you want to see your average 5K time when you are in South Africa versus when you are in the south of France. You can add a property on your daily note to say that this run took place in France, this run took place in South Africa, and then you can group by that specific metadata. So that's just a different use case, but we're using this example. So let your creativity run wild. This is the date. This is the properties that we choose. I'm just going to remove this. And that's basically it for the quarter. If you want to see what the quarterly note template looks like, this is what it looks like. And these are the base queries that we pull in. And then lastly, well, second to last, we have the year. So let's go to the yearly note. Yearly note is exactly the same. We pull in the yearly note base view. So if we go to the yearly note and the yearly stats, we can see that it would also group it by month. And the filter just changed to check where the daily notes date formatted as a year is equal to this yearly notes year. That's basically all it does. And we look for type contains daily. So same for yearly note. And that's about it. If you want to check out the yearly note template, this is what it looks like. We pull in the bases, we pull in the calendar navigation, and this is pretty cool from the Journals plugin is it automatically detects that this is the journal yearly. So it makes this navigation bar work seamlessly. You can go to previous year, next year. Quite nice. And the rest of this is for another video because this is not base specific. But again, if you want this whole system done for you without you having to waste hours, the Evergreen Vault has this whole setup ready for you to go. Okay, so let's recap. We started with the daily notes, and in the daily notes we filled in the metadata, we filled in a couple of pictures, we can review some things via the daily base views on the daily note, and we do that for every single day of the week. And then at the end of the week, get to the 10th, we now want to do our weekly review. So we go to our weekly note, and we have these metadata properties here that we can fill in. And we can fill in a summary of the week after we reviewed it. But the first base query, the weekly note, just pulls in all of our days for that specific week. The second base query, the weekly stats, pulls in all the statistics for that week. And it gives us some averages at the bottom. So here we want to make this average as well. Then we carry on filling in our weeks, and at the end of each week we fill in the weekly note, and then we finally get to the end of the month, and this is where you can fill in this information for the graphs, but again, not going to go into that. And here you can see your monthly note is going to display all your daily notes for that specific month. Your monthly stats is going to display all of your notes for that specific month. So this is exactly the same as the weekly. The only thing that changed was our filter, which just looks at the year and the month, and then type daily, and then exactly the same thing for the stats, looking at the month, the year, and the daily. Quarterly, you reach the end of your quarter, this is going to display all the days in that quarter, so quarter 3, all the statistics for that quarter, and we're grouping it by month. And the filter is just this, a little bit complicated, just copy it over one for one, and filter is this. And lastly, we get to the yearly note, and exactly the same. We're just looking for the years equal to this yearly note. Stats grouped by month, also looking for that specific year. And that is how Base transformed my journaling setup. This is incredibly simple, and it is so much fun to use. It is fast. You don't need to wait for things. It just feels right.